What's up, Igor? Prince Raw with the Zion Records. Cool, bro. That is awesome. I got 3 screens now. Hopefully it doesn't let us yeah. I see you, Claire. Claire. Anu. Anu is Claire. Thought that profile picture looked familiar. Can somebody put the screen up on the screen? Yeah, just like that. All right, Market Monday, first one of the year. Our first Market Monday of the year. We are embarking on the year of the horse, which is cool. Not yet, but Chinese New Year. Hopefully that brings some good energy to us. The horse is on fire this year, so let's see what happens to crypto. So again, I hope everybody had an amazing 2025 and that 2026 is even better. Obviously, there were lots of lessons, lots of ups, lots of downs, and lots of in-betweens. But hopefully we're all better and more equipped to, again, win this year, okay? I'm super excited. I think that there's going to be some, we can only go sideways forever. So at some point, we're bound to leap on out of this long consolidation that we've been in, So 2025 was kind of the same, right? It was kind of the same as 2024 and 2023 when I put the blanket on general crypto, right? And we'll take a look at some of this. But here you can see, this is basically crypto since 2023. I don't have this included, but we've kind of just been in a sideways range, in an upward sideways range, but a sideways range nonetheless, where hey, crypto pumps 185% here. This is the total market cap excluding Bitcoin and stablecoins. So this is like just altcoins, right? This is just altcoins. So like we have a really strong open into 2024 because Bitcoin ETFs are announced and things like that. And then the Bitcoin ETF finally launches and we lose $550 billion off the market cap. And then we gain another $862 billion in market cap because, well, now Trump is getting in. It's the new office. And then we lose $856 billion. $808 billion in market cap. And then we gain $856 billion in market cap. And then right before we closed off the year, we lost another $634 billion in market cap, which was 42%, right? So it's just been like this crazy up and down type of market, which obviously, as we talked about in the end of the year inside the vault, as we'll kind of cover a little bit more this year as well, when you have such a big sideways range and you have momentum systems, they're not going to do as well, right? Because they need sustained momentum. They need a little more of what we had in 2021 or even 2022 on the downside, right? Not like a bunch of this up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, 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 up, down, 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 right? Like this is just not the best market for momentum and trend-based systems. But as you could see, it was kind of a weird year for both Bitcoin and ETH as well, based on the 4-year cycles. Usually this time, as I've outlined in the yellow square here, right, like 2025 was supposed to be another 2021, right? And there's these 4-year cycles that crypto has followed for a very long time. And that's where a lot of the modeling and people's expectations were built around. They were built around the 4-year cycle of crypto. And, you can see 2017 for Bitcoin was like green all around, right? 2021 finished really strong, and or this is Q1, this is Q4 right here, right? I get them backwards, but you could see we had usually Q1 of this 4-year cycle would open green. Well, last year it opened red. Then usually Q4 would wrap up and at least be green. This time it went down, right? And it was the same story for ETH. ETH opened up red when it was technically supposed to open up green based on these 4-year cycles. You could see Q1 of 2021, ETH went up by 160%, right? Q1 of 2025, ETH went down by 45%. That's some crazy deviations, right? And you could see, I mean, the years prior were really strong, right? Whereas these years weren't so strong. So we've just kind of had this little off cycle. And Q4 usually of these 4-year cycles would be like the final blow off top before the start of the next bear market, which in some camps of people in crypto, they think that that bear market has already begun, right? Because Bitcoin has topped out around the time that it tops out. Alts got completely crushed. I think ETH went down by 40% from the highs. And it's just, it was just a pretty crazy wrap up to the year. Unexpected, kind of expected, right? Like we thought the 4-year cycles would be as great as they were on the upside, right? And so far, they weren't working. And then they got the top right? So a lot of people sold Bitcoin in October. That's when it topped out. That's when the whole 365-day until the bottom starts, and it was just crazy, But the reason for that, in a lot of, just a lot of people that kind of learned this lesson is don't fight the Fed. Like one thing that we didn't have these last 4 years that we did have in 2021, that we did have in 2017, was that monetary policy was aligned, right? And monetary policy is not, oh, liquidity is going up and M2 is going up and, the stock market's going up. Like monetary policy is interest rates and what is the central bank doing, right? And central banks generally for the last 3 years.
Igor, your mic cut out. No, I still don't hear you.
Am I good?
Now you're good. Yep.
Awesome. It's great. Yeah, awesome. So I don't know what you guys didn't hear, but basically, monetary policy this cycle was just not aligned. The Fed was cutting. I mean, the Fed was raising rates. The Fed was doing quantitative tightening. So they were pulling liquidity out of the system. And again, that just did not fare well for an asset like crypto, which is, again, on the higher end of the risk curve, right? It's where we can expect that we'll outperform most people when things are good, but it's also where we underperform most assets when things are not so good and not so aligned with us, right? And that's just how it was. And I'll show you some charts, but a lot of that is changing this year, and it's already changed in December of last year. So maybe this is the catalyst that actually can push crypto up this year. And that is, you could see the Fed survey sees about 220 billion in bill buying over 12 months, right? So respondents to a Federal Reserve survey anticipated that the central bank's reserve management purchases will total more than 200 billion. So we have $200 billion of fresh liquidity coming in from the central bank, from the Federal Reserve. Jerome Powell turned the money printer back on, and he's pumping liquidity into the system. And you could see here, right here, right? The balance sheet is back, right? You could see since 2022 where it topped out, and it's really just gone down ever since, right? This is what hasn't been giving any fuel to the fire. It's like we've been swimming upstream this entire time, right? And you saw, I mean, look, crypto is higher than it was in 2022, right? In some degree. If you look at earlier in 2022, we're kind of in the same levels. But generally, it has been kind of growing, but in this very elongated channel. But now we're likely to see this continue, right? And you could see that we saw that gradual balance sheet expansion. We're doing twice the amount of QE that we did in this little circle. And then if anything breaks this year, or if anything changes, like a new central bank governor, this new whoever Trump appoints as the new federal bank chairman, we're expecting that he's going to lower rates even more. He's going to do more quantitative easing. And again, that is all very good for risk, right? And I have some charts that we'll go through here. You can see this, right? This is the all-time high of the altcoin market since November of 2021. We have failed every time we've approached it. Everybody gets really bullish here. This is it. We're going to break out. Everybody got really bullish here. This is it. We're going to break up out of it. And every time we've gotten denied. And you can see we've just been consolidating really since 2024, right? Like we're literally where we were in 2024 at the beginning of 2024. So it's just been this like, oh, we're a little higher, we're lower, we're higher, we're lower, but we're sideways, right? And the sideways is kind of exhausted a lot of participants. A lot of you crypto investors, people might be a little bit like, what's going on? Like, I'm getting sick of this. I just want to throw in the rug. And again, that's like, in a way, time to get into some conspiracy, right? In a way, the higher people, the higher participants, the institutional participants, right? What they're doing is, and this is what I believe, they want to shake out as many of the participants as they can before they finally start to make this market, right? That's why they're called market makers. They can control whether prices go up or control whether prices go down. And right now, they've probably been for a long time keeping it sideways because, well, Larry Fink and BlackRock and JP Morgan, they all want a piece of the pie. They don't want to see what we saw in 2021 without having a piece of that pie, right? So maybe this year with the Clarity Act and everything that's coming, they're going to actually have their skin in the game. Larry Stink is going to have his skin in the game. And then he'll pump up all of our bags. They'll take ETH to 15,000, 20,000. They'll take Bitcoin past 2, 3, 4, 500,000, right? And the thing is like, they kind of tell us what their intentions are, right? Like Larry Fink has been a very strong proponent of Bitcoin, and now Jamie Dimon, he's all into Bitcoin, you know what I mean? And it's interesting, right? Because they're long-term investors, they're institutional investors. And yeah, Billy, we'll talk about PMI a little bit too. I think I'll have some charts on PMI. But you can see this is the balance sheet in 2020 and 2021. And when we see the balance sheet expand so much with continuous QE, right? You can see, I mean, this was a black swan. This was their trajectory from before the black swan, and the trajectory kind of continued. And when you have that continuous liquidity in the market, right? You can see crypto here. This is the stable coin. This is the market excluding Bitcoin, excluding stable coins, altcoins. It went up by 4,600%. Back then we grew from $32 billion all the way to 1.5 trillion, right? Like that's a lot of market cap growth. Maybe we see the same in this, whatever type of monetary policy we're going to have, right? And you can see this was 2015 all the way to 2019, right? You could see that when the Fed starts offloading their balance sheet like they did in all of 2018, that's when we went into a pretty bad and nasty bear market. And we went from, I don't know where this was maybe 1 trillion all the way down to, a couple billion. So it was a pretty nasty sell-off for altcoins, particularly during that time, right? And you can see this was essentially the stock market as it opened on Friday. We had a very optimistic market. And then as the day closed, we had a little bit of what they call a mixed session, right? Stocks kind of tumbled. They opened high, but then they rug pulled everybody. And it was interesting. But we'll take a look at that. You can see, I mean, the S&P 500 as a whole is just off all-time highs, right? You can see this was the week last week, right? We closed red. We opened near all-time highs, and then we closed down here. And then this is this week, and the market has been so far pretty optimistic. It's just within a hair of all-time highs for the S&P. The NASDAQ, this is a chart of the NASDAQ. You can see last week was pretty brutal, a pretty big sell-off with, a few days that the market wasn't trading. And then this week we might be picking back up. And again, we're within a stone's throw of the all-time high, okay? And we've recovered this sell-off that we saw in October with the China drama, right? We recovered a pretty good amount of it. So let's see what happens. Things look bullish still. I mean, it's the stock market, like this thing is at all-time highs. Maybe some of that finds its way into Bitcoin, right? You could see that this is the new year, right? This was the new year. And Bitcoin so far has been pretty positive. It's been pretty optimistic. It's been pretty green. Let's see if it can continue, or if this is going to be another round of chopped salad and that's what we're going to eat today, right? Hopefully not for the rest of the year, but let's see, right? It was a pretty crazy, sell-off into the end of the year. We went sideways. Maybe now we're starting to kind of launch up out of that. It'd be nice to see. Obviously, it would be nice to see. Bitcoin is starting strong. ETH is also starting strong. Looks very similar to Bitcoin, except for the fact that Bitcoin was making all-time highs through 2020, 2021, 2023, 2024, 2025, while ETH still hasn't made a new all-time high since 2021, right? So it's been struggling a lot more than Bitcoin has. Let's see what happens. I'm pretty bullish. I'm pretty optimistic on whatever ETH can give us, So some other news, right? We all kind of heard about what happened in Venezuela. There's been a lot of celebration over that here in Panama. I've been hearing a lot of cars driving and honking and doing crazy stuff. You can see Maduro effed around and he found out, right? And it's pretty interesting, right? Because on the surface, you can see what's on the surface, and then we can also look at what's maybe underneath that a little bit, right? We can look at what maybe is underneath that a little bit, okay? And this is, again, a little bit of conspiracy, but also not really, right? We know that Venezuela is rich with resources. They have a lot of oil. And right now, globally, we have an energy problem, right? In Europe, the electricity rates are spiking, and wherever they're building data centers, the energy rates are spiking. And, we just need all this energy. And obviously, Venezuela has a lot of oil, has a lot of energy, has probably some other resources that we need. And you could see that the U.S. is literally running Venezuela until a safe transition after operation absolutely resolves, right? After a safe transition after the operation, absolute resolve. I guess it's the name of the operation. I don't know. But, right, we kind of have this victory, right, on some levels for the U.S., for the people of Venezuela. I mean, they were really happy to see Maduro out and in custody. As you can see, Tim is going to buy some beachfront Venezuelan property. Maybe is a good idea. Maybe it'd be a good idea to tokenize something out there. I don't know. I'm sure the real estate is cheap. But yeah, it's just interesting. And you can see here, right, this is the $60 billion question. This is also interesting. This is also, again, just to disclose, this is not confirmed. This is a rumor, right? But it's one that's got maybe some legs. And apparently Venezuela could be secretly a Bitcoin superpower. Okay, as you can see here, there's this man named Alex Saab, right? Which actually, before we get there, for years, Maduro and his inner circle systematically looted Venezuela, billions in oil revenue, gold reserves, and state assets. And according to sources with direct knowledge of the operation, converted much of it into cryptocurrency, right? Which was really interesting. So there's this person named Alex Saab, and he may be the only person on earth who knows how to access what sources estimate could be as much as $60 billion in Bitcoin, a figure that, if verified, could make the Maduro's regime's hidden fortune one of the largest cryptocurrency holdings on the planet, rivaling MicroStrategy and potentially exceeding El Salvador's entire national reserve. The claim comes from human sources and has not been confirmed through blockchain analysis, but the underlying math is provocative. That was interesting, right? And on the news of Venezuela, we had stocks, gold, Bitcoin all jump as Venezuela concerns outweighed by AI optimism, right? The economic impact of what happened in Venezuela is too small to weigh on equity markets, right? It wasn't like, war, scary time. No, they rebounded. They brushed it off, right? Now you can see that there's a new energy doctrine, a regime change, then drill. Okay, so again, we know that whenever the U.S. gets involved internationally and they start kind of tinkering with certain things, usually, and especially with somebody like Trump, they're going to get whatever they want, right? What they want out of that country, which is resources. You can see there's a new energy doctrine, and they're going to change the regime, right? They're going to plant whoever they want to plant so they get more control of the area, do whatever they want, get more resources. But yeah, so it's really about energy and regime changes. You can see crude oil, right? It fell following the U.S. strike on Venezuela. Again, right? The markets are discount mechanisms, right? And you have something called the futures market, which is super big. It's what it sounds like. It's betting on the future value of something. So, for example, you have futures markets for everything. You have futures for rice and cotton and chocolate and beef and a lot of things, commodities, right, that we need. Well, when something like what happened in Venezuela happened, the market says, holy crap, the U.S. has probably all this access to oil now. You know, oil prices are likely to come down. And again, if we keep going down the rabbit hole, if you look at elections, which we have midterms this year, which again is another catalyst of probably why they're going to make sure and do everything in their power to make sure their market, which really is the stock market, they don't care about crypto as much. Maybe we just get some of that stuff over here. But when you have low oil prices, usually the party that is incumbent, right, or is in power can stay in power, right? And it's crazy. Just look at an indicator, look at oil prices and look at the outcome of elections. People paying too much for gas, they're going to choose the other guy, all right? Just had a annoying thing go off. Yeah, we're good. All right, back to our regularly scheduled program. And again, this is good because lower inflation is likely to get the Fed more room to cut rates and be more generous with liquidity. And again, if the party can retain control, can get a good midterm, right, they're probably going to be incentivized to, you know, make sure the stock market does well and make sure that things don't crash. Which again, because they're incentivized to see a Republican stay in control, right? Which I think they are right now, and they need the market to do well. They need oil to be low to again, you know, make the people happy, right? Now here's some of the bad stuff, right? So there were two articles on Zero Hedge. One was all the bullish things, and one was kind of all the bearish things. So we'll go through this right now. So secondly, right now, the market is pricing in a soft landing, okay, where inflation cools, growth persists, and rate cuts continue. Yet that outcome would be, this is me painting the bearish side, ripping the Band-Aid off, and then we'll go into the bullish side to potentially see what everybody else thinks about the market. But when inflation falls this quickly, it typically reflects a slowdown in demand rather than policy success. Furthermore, if inflation stubbornly remains above targets on the labor market, shows uneven data, the Federal Reserve might delay or reduce the magnitude of rate cuts, right? So again, inflation is still sticky. Inflation is still not at 2%. The Fed may not cut rates as much as we want because the inflation is still a problem, right? And again, inflation is one of their mandates. right? Third, earnings growth estimates are very optimistic. Right now, everybody's optimistic on the market. And this was kind of cool. Wall Street currently expects the bottom 493 stocks. And the reason why 493 is because you have the S&P 500. And of that 500, 7 companies really rule and give most of the performance to the S&P 500. The other 493, those are altcoins in the stock market, right? Those are the altcoins. And right now, a lot of people on Main Street or Wall Street expect these stocks to do fairly well, right? And for their earnings to grow more than they have in the past 3 years. And it's notable in that over the past 3 years, the average growth rate for the bottom 493 stocks was less than 3%. Yet over the next 2 years, that earnings growth is expected to average above 11%. The market is pricing this type of stuff in. Furthermore, the outlook is even more exuberant for the most economically sensitive stocks. Small and mid-cap companies struggled to produce earnings growth during the previous 3 years of robust economic growth, driven by monetary and fiscal stimulus. However, next year, even if the Fed's soft landing narrative is valid, they're expected to see a surge in earnings growth rates of nearly 60%. There's a high expectation on the market right now, and especially your smaller cap companies that still make up the S&P 500. And third, you have geopolitical and global trade pressures persist as a threat to more bullish market outlooks. Trade friction, geopolitical tension, or currency instability all contribute to sudden shifts in risk tolerance. Recent fund manager survey identify AI valuation bubbles, bond market turbulence, inflation resurgence, credit stresses, and trade escalations as top concerns, right? Which you can see 57% of people are concerned that we're in a bubble, right? But the funny thing about bubbles is when everybody thinks you're in a bubble, you're not usually going to see the bubble pop, right? You don't see so much doubt and the market sell. Like it's herd mentality. And you can see here that due to weaker consumption and cooling labor dynamics, as recent economic data indicate, disinflation has accompanied slower GDP growth and decline in personal consumption momentum. If the economy were indeed set to reaccelerate, these trends should be increasing rather than returning to historical averages. So like we're not seeing the economy grow as much as we did in prior years, right? And again, these are all things that are like, well, what's going on? And you can see here that our manufacturing sector ended 2026 at weakest in over a year, right? Which you have this blue line, which is the ISM manufacturing. This is a gauge on whether the economy is expanding or contracting. And you can tell if the blue line is above 50, well, it's expanding. If the blue line is below 50, it's contracting, right? And what the ISM is it's a survey that's sent out to people in the manufacturing, purchasing managers index. This is like a survey that's sent out to a bunch of business owners. Hey, how's you doing? You know, are your shipments improving? Are you paying more prices? Are you expecting your business to improve? This and that and the other. And you have this sentiment. And then you also have hard data, which really points to, oh, this sector grew by this much, and we have hard data to prove it, right? So what you have here is you have the red line, which is hard data, right? And you can see, I mean, sentiment has been detached from hard data before, and then the sentiment kind of creeps back in. So the economy was expanding, but the hard data was expanding. And here you can see that we're actually in hard data, we're pretty up, but in sentiment, we're pretty down. And you can see Billy threw in right here in the chat. There's 300 companies that are pulled for the PMI, right? There's 300 companies that are pulled for the PMI. And you have two gauges. You have the U.S. manufacturing and you have ISM, which is just two different ways of looking at it. You can see U.S. manufacturing pretty high, indicating expansion, but ISM, which is a pretty big number, indicating contraction, right? But who knows? Maybe this snaps up. I've shown this and pointed this out before in previous live streams, but the altcoin market is kind of very correlated to what the economy is doing. If the economy is expanding, great. Alts usually do well. If the economy is contracting, that sucks. Usually alts don't do as good, right? Usually alts don't do as good. But you can see September, right? This is a pretty good time for the market. June was also a pretty good time for the market. We had some expansion. But yeah, this is interesting stuff. And finally, right here, investors have become extremely complacent about above average returns. Take a look at the total annual returns of the market since 2019. This is just the S&P 500, right? But these have just been above average returns. Usually the S&P does 9, 10%. We did 31%, 18%, 28%. Yeah, we had a bear market. Then we had 26%, 24%, 17%. But we had this streak for so long, and you have people saying, "Oh my goodness, this is crazy. The market's not supposed to be like this. Why are the valuations this crazy?" And then you have gold that doubled in price in the last 2 years, which was just like unheard of or very rare that happens. And really what I think we're seeing is a new market, a new regime, a new way of the new normal. At least as right now, crypto's lagging behind, but we're seeing the leading indicator, which I think is the stock market, commodities, right? That there's something happening and it's big. And what we're seeing is the currency devaluation trade, right? This is the debasement trade, right? Like you have nations internationally selling their dollars and buying gold with it, right? Because they don't trust currency anymore. They don't trust fiat anymore. And whatever is happening is devaluation on a crazy level. We know what's going on with the debt. We know how in 6 years, Social Security is going to end. And there's all these things that are just like inevitable. And I think the market's starting to finally catch on to that. I was listening to an interesting, podcast, like before 2020, no one was really talking about inflation. No one was really talking about prices and how out of hand they are. And it wasn't so mainstream. It wasn't so like as in the media as it is right now, right? From 2010 to 2020, I mean, inflation was very small. Like people in America were kind of spoiled because what the US government was doing was exporting a lot of that inflation to countries like Argentina, countries like Venezuela, because they're all dollar denominated in their debt, and there's just, creative things you can do. But yeah, it's just interesting that like, a lot of people, think this is like absurd and things are bad, that we're in the biggest bubble we've ever seen. And then you have another camp of people that are like, hey, this is just the new normal, right? I mean, for every $1 that exists, for every $5 that exist, one of them was made in the last 5 years, like this is like crazy accounting. So it's just interesting stuff like that. But again, this is some of the things that are like worrying the market. Obviously, AI valuations and stock market valuations, they're high, they're absurd. But again, we've had that before in the market, before 2000, before 2008, we want bubbles. That's how money is made, right? And usually the year of the midterms can be a good year for markets. Okay. Obviously, we just looked at that, what people are worried about. U.S. equity valuation is elevated across all measures. So basically what this is a Z-score is looking at the average, right? And it's looking at the average, the most extreme lows, the most extreme highs. And from that average, where are we currently, right? And this is an average since 1900. And you can see that on a lot of metrics, we're at the extremes of the averages, right? Like valuations, dividend yields, price to book ratios, the trend of the price to earnings, the trailing price to earnings, the forward price to earnings growth, that's all elevated, And again, this is a risk. It's something to be aware of, but it doesn't mean that the market is bound to go down from here. I mean, the market will stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. That's a big saying in the market, right? But here we have some of the good news, right? And some of the other stuff that is pulling the market higher, right? And here you have global liquidity, right, which is M2, which we did see crypto deviate from that, but I pointed to the balance sheet at the beginning that maybe that's more of what we need to pay attention to. You can see here global liquidity in the S&P 500, and they're like very kind of in line, right? They move in lockstep, right? Since 2020, since when liquidity goes down, the stock market goes down. When liquidity goes up, stock market goes up. Liquidity goes up, stock market goes up. Liquidity goes down, eventually the stock market went down. Liquidity went up, eventually the stock market went up, and you have this ebb and flow, this relationship, right? And you can see it's at record levels. And global liquidity looks at China, India, all these countries, okay? Then you have the surge. A renewed surge in the global money supply will lift global equities. It almost always does, right? And here you have the surge of liquidity. And this is them kind of plotting that it's probably likely to go up. We don't have the data yet. It's delayed. But you can see how global markets move with the surge of liquidity, right? You have the global money supply and the MCCI World Index, which is like, I guess, the index of every asset in the world, something like that. M&A is up 65%. What is M&A? This is mergers and acquisitions, right? This is like VC territory, okay? So M&A volumes are up 65% year over year, even higher in the US, over 100%. This is corporate boardroom animal spirit when it is just waking up. You can see that. I mean, look at last year. Look at 2024, right? This is where we were at. In 2025, we had mergers and acquisitions go through the roof. Guess when else we had mergers and acquisitions go through the roof? It was in 2020, right? Bam, into 2021, which was, again, quite a crazy year for the stock market. And it's at the highest level it's really been in a very long time. And that's just coming from North America, right? Then we have a historic year. There were 68 global merger and acquisition deals valued above $10 billion in 2025. This is nearly doubled from the prior year, exceeding the combined total for 2023 and 2024. By comparison, the previous all-time high was set in 2015 at 62 deals. And guess what? 2016, 2017, great years for crypto and risk assets. Goldman analysts are bullish. That's cool. Global analyst. This is wait. The Goldman Sachs Analyst Index (GSAI) increased by 1.6 points to 61.4 in December. The composition was strong as the new orders up 10.6 points to 68.4, and employment up 5.1 points to 51.2. Components both increased while the shipments component was unchanged. So look at that. This is what you could see. Usually what Goldman Sachs, whatever their outlook is, right, is usually what this ISM manufacturing and services does. That's the red line. And again, we have seen a strong correlation between ISM, manufacturing and services, and the market. Not just every market, but particularly the smaller cap markets like altcoins, like the Russell 2000, like the smaller stocks, right? You can see, like, look, 2020 into 2021, economy is expanding. Goldman Sachs kind of nailed it. And we had a great market. Then we had contraction. Markets went down. Since 2022, it's kind of been ebbing and flowing, bouncing sideways, not expanding, not contracting. We don't know what's going on, right? Here you can see 2000, after the 2009 crash, right? We had expansion, markets rebounded. 2016, 2017, expansion, markets rebounded. Great time for crypto. Good stuff on the table for 2026. Technicals, January for the month as a whole since 1928. January is the third best month with an average return of 1.2%, up 62.2% of the time. Interesting. So more than half the time, this is the stock market, so we'll see if crypto is correlated or not. but more than half the time, the stock market has a really good, really good month in January. February, you could see on average, it's a flat month, tax season, things like this. And looks like we don't have as good of a month like that until maybe April. Tax returns, things of that sort. Then you have the summer, midsummer rallies between June and July, right? So interesting. And this was interesting too. Look at that. Because last year was also a very special year where we started the year in drawdown, right? We had like a sell-off. We had the tariff tantrum from the big orange president. And 2025, we saw market sell off, 15% year-to-date low, right? We opened and we went as low as 15.3%. Then the year ended 16% higher than it started, right? So the recovery was amazing. Now, if you look at other years that this happened, 2020, terrible start of the year, great end of the year. 2009, terrible start, great end. 1982, terrible start, great end. You could see that the following year, well, from 1982, the following year, very good. From 2009, the following year, very good. 2020, well, to 2021, I made tons of money, 26.9%. So if you showed this to a random child, somebody not that smart, they can probably assume, which it's not great to assume because you can make an ass of yourself, but maybe this year ends on a green note, right? And maybe, hopefully, crypto is part of that green note. Hopefully. It's been sideways too long, man. We got QE. Come on, give us the goodies, you know? And this kind of wraps it up. 2025 had the low. This is just an overall win, I think, for America in 2025. Or this is globally. I'm not sure if this is globally or America. But we had the lowest rate of mass shootings since 2006, the lowest rate of homicides since the 1950s, the lowest rate of teenage pregnancy in recorded history, the lowest rate of suicide since 2020, road fatalities since 2019, drug overdoses since 2019, alcohol consumption in recorded history. That's cool. A lot of people are starting to quit drinking. I don't know what. And we had the lowest level of inflation since 2020. Pretty cool. Nice little win. So yeah, hopefully this year we see some goodies. We're supposed to have some stimulus in the summertime, again, conveniently for the midterms. You know, the Treasury General account, I don't even know where it's at. I want to look at it with all of you. Treasury General account. Let's see what this is. Is this telling me where it is? No. You suck. Is it the TGA? Yeah, it is. So look at that. Oh, not what I meant. Nope, not what I want to do either. Max. So yeah, you can see here, this is the Treasury General account. This is the amount of liquidity that the US government has that they can, at their will, inject into the economy, right? Now, what's crazy is if we look at this is the balance sheet, right? Right here. This is from 2020, right? And this time the balance sheet was increasing and risk assets did phenomenal. That's when I made tons of money and investing and all that stuff. Then we had this contraction. So a lot of people might be like, well, hey, why did the market go up while Fed was in QT, or why did like a certain part of the market go up, like Bitcoin and stocks and other things? Well, part of that was you got to remember that prior to 2025 and the Biden administration, you had Janet Yellen, who was the Treasury Secretary. And what Janet Yellen was doing was anytime the market got a little, let's say, shaky, she would draw on this money, right? You can see, look at that. From April 2022 all the way into June of 2023, right? That's when a lot of this QT started, right? Into the summer of 2023. Then we had, the Fed inject a bunch of money that pumped the market. We had Janet Yellen reflate the Treasury. And then from April into July of 2025, again, she can pull money from the TGA, inject it into the economy, and it finds its way back into the market. And since July of 2025, right? Since July of 2025, we've been increasing that to the highest level, and we're now kind of in this little period where they're probably starting to draw on it. What can they do with this money? They can use this money to buy back outstanding debts. That's called treasury buybacks. Okay. And it's like when Amazon has a really good quarter, instead of doing a dividend and just airdropping money to everybody who holds Amazon, they can just take their excess profits into the open market and buy back their shares. What does that do? It pumps liquidity into the market, raises the price of stocks up, and it's good for stock values. And, Jeff Bezos gets more rich, and we're all happier if we hold Amazon. So the Treasury, America has a form of doing that themselves where, they have 10-year, 20-year, 30-year, 5-year, 2-year, 3-year bills that are outstanding, these bonds. The government can go in and they can just buy it back from you, right? Without paying you all that extra interest, all that crazy interest they might owe you. When they do that and inject money back into the system, now you, as a sovereign individual who had maybe $1 billion of debt, now has $1 billion of cash. You're like, well, hey, I don't want to hold these stinky dollars. So you go out, you maybe buy some Bitcoin with it. Maybe you buy some S&P 500 with it. Maybe you buy some gold with it, right? And again, that's how that money from the Fed, not from the Fed, from the Treasury, from the United States government, finds its way back into circulation, and it can find its way back into the market. Okay. So oddly enough, the Treasury does not need the Federal Reserve to be able to create liquidity from thin air. And now you have the Federal Reserve who's going to be buying all of that debt from the Treasury in the form of QE. Okay. So I think this year is going to be up year, personally. I mean, hopefully, right? You got a lot of stuff going for it. Annual earnings growth. You can see the largest 7 stocks in the dark blue line. This is an interesting trend. And this is, again, something that I think is going to support us in the cryptoverse. You can see that since 2024, the biggest stocks that make up the stock market, their earnings growth, how much their earnings are growing, has been actually reducing, right? And this is the consensus from 2026 forward. So a lot of the market thinks that their earnings are going to grow less, while the remaining 493 stocks that make up more of the stock market in companies, not exactly in valuation, but maybe this is like, there's still a significant chunk of the market. Their earnings have been actually growing, while the largest 7 stocks, even though their earnings are growing more than these smaller companies, they're just earning at a smaller cap, right? At a smaller pace. So again, Russell 2000, I just look at the chart of Russell 2000, look at the chart of Ethereum. There's some similarities there, right? The Russell 2000 is all the mid-cap companies in the US. All the small companies in the S&P 500, they're kind of in that field as well. Okay. Yeah. We're optimistic, right? Realized and consensus earnings per share growth for select US equities, indices, right? And you could see, look at 2024, 2025, 2026, the S&P 500, we're still expecting the earnings per share to grow. We're expecting equal weight S&P 500 also to grow, the NASDAQ to grow, the S&P mid-cap 400, so like minus the 100 biggest companies, just the 400 to grow. But look at the one where we expect the most amount of growth. And again, Goldman Sachs, right? Usually what they expect, right, can come into fruition, right? They're not stupid. Let's just say that. They're not dumb. Yeah, right here. They're expecting for the most amount of growth to come from the Russell 2000. If you look at correlation charts, right, maybe we can look at it together real quick. Yeah. Look at ETH here. And we know about ETH, it kind of leads the market, right? The altcoin market. Now we're going to compare it against the Russell 2000 on a new pane. And look at the Russell 2000. You have some pretty interesting similarities between ETH and the Russell 2000. I mean, like, look, the Russell 2000 makes an all-time high in November of 2021, revisits that high in November of 2024, very similar to ETH, kind of almost revisiting the high in December of 2024, not quite making it there, selling off. And recently, again, I think traditional markets probably lead crypto in some certain way, right? Russell 2000 has now just 21, right? And you can see some interesting correlations, similarities amongst the Russell 2000, which is just the mid-cap companies. This is the altcoins of the US economy. And when I say altcoins, I mean businesses, but just smaller. And again, there's interesting correlations there. So if I was to bet on something, I would bet that that probably continues. Okay. Now we're back into presenting. So with that, you can see this is the S&P 500 Wall Street's 2026 year-end price targets as forecasted in December 2025. This is looking at all your biggest banks: Barclays, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Oppenheimer, Deutsche Bank, Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo. And this is their expectations for the S&P 500 year-end of 2026. And just for, let's just see, where is the S&P 500 right now? It is at, let's just call it a little shy of 7,000. And you can see that the majority of banks are expecting for that price to be higher, right? Where the average falls at 7,555. That is less than 10% on the year, but still a green year nonetheless. It'll be interesting. You got estimates as high as 8,100, and you got, I don't know, people who think Stifel Nicholas thinks it's going to be sideways for the S&P 500. And the chart that I'll finish with now is the analog that we're following of this blue line is the .com boom and bust. And this white line is us right now from October 2022 until today. The blue line is the NASDAQ from 1996 to 2003. You can see there's some similarities here, right? And potentially we haven't even entered this crazy blow off top. Again, at this place here, everybody believes the stock market is only going to go up. Nobody is calling the bubble. I mean, probably now with more sophisticated investors, like, we'll have more opinions, and more opinions means more people will think that we're in a bubble. But again, sentiment, right? We'll see how it all unfolds. But I would, again, speculate that Trump is going to get what he wants, and a bigger, higher market is probably going to be what he gets. Because he's just been pretty good at getting what he wants, okay? And he's really tied a lot of his credibility and legacy to how well the stock market is doing. He's crowned himself as the Bitcoin president, and let's see, 2025 was a little disappointing, but maybe he just wanted to rip the Band-Aid off. I don't know who the powers are that control this market, but you could see we're not even close to where we were in the dot-com boom, right, in terms of price action. So yeah, let's just quickly review how we're positioned across all of our strategies real quick. Okay, so here's our stocks. We are fully on the sidelines. Half of my stock portfolio is in cash currently, because that's where I trade them. And you can see, I mean, we got MicroStrategy, who is out of the market. Okay, we've been out of the market. We closed a really epic short trade from October into December. So as MicroStrategy fell by 32%, we made money in that fall. You can see here of about 30%, right? Pretty cool, pretty nice. Let's see what it does. This is pretty awesome. We got Tesla currently sideways, right? Tesla is also fighting. It's kind of like ETH as well, right? Hasn't made a new all-time high since 2024. Before that, since 2021, right? Like barely making highs. And some drawdown. It's sideways, right? But again, if Tesla has a great year, we could see a lot of what we saw in 2024 when it ripped to new highs. And if I take this back, you know, I'm seeing a lot more stuff on Tesla right now with robo-taxi and robotics, and who knows what happens with humanoids, but you know, it's positioned pretty well, right? It's not the most amount of drawdown it's ever suffered. We're not in the most amount of drawdown that it's ever suffered. You could see it had bigger drawdown here in 2020. And yeah. So if Tesla gets into another crazy bull run, we could probably make some pretty nice dough from this system right here, right? Yeah, you can see 1,600%. That'd be great for us to make new highs here on Tesla. NVIDIA, sideways. I mean, NVIDIA's price action was a little choppy last year, right? Like sideways, sideways, sideways. And maybe we continue higher, maybe we don't. What I like about this script, personally, is if we go into another bear market like we did in 2021, this script can attack on the short side, right? So it actually made money while NVIDIA was selling off. So if the AI bubble bursts, we have tools and things that will protect us and have us short that downside, right? Which is pretty cool, pretty awesome. And again, there's a nice little reset period right now where we're out of the market. We're seeing what happens. It seems like, you know, maybe soon enough we'll start. What's cool is when the market's starting to go up, you can see from June, right, until about August and into September, right? If the market's going, we're going to be fully positioned, right? Stocks are going to be fully in, right? It had a pretty good trade here in June. It's actually, oddly enough, when I got in into these was around June. You can see 22% trade. Since then, we've been consolidating sideways. Well, let's see. They're momentum systems, right? They're going to get chopped out. They're going to get chopped around. So, yeah. And then you have FNGU, which it did have a ticker change, but what I know is from this community, this was one of their best performing strategies since before. So this ticker updates every 25 years, as I understand it, based on options contracts and long-term expired things like this, things that are like very hard to understand. But they had to update a new ticker. But I think there's one that the community is working on called Bulls, and this has some more history on it, and it just has a little more track record, just a little more. I think they're working on a new stock strategy around this right here. But this is the FANG stocks: Facebook, Apple, Nvidia, Google, with 3 times leverage. You can see out of the market. And then we have TQQQ, which is the NASDAQ with 3 times leverage. The tenets of all the strategies on the stock side, on the crypto side, is let's play the markets that are going to grow, right? Let's play the markets that are going to grow. Let's be there where the puck is at, right? So NASDAQ, I mean, and this is 3 times leverage. There's like decay and things like that, but the NASDAQ usually grows, right? Technology expands, innovates, all that stuff. You can see here, MicroStrategy is the Bitcoin bank of the future. Tesla, robots and EVs and AI and whatever else Elon is going to cook up. Nvidia, AI boom, right? FANG stocks, Facebook, Apple, Nvidia, Google. Google was one of the best performing stocks last year. That was pretty interesting. Out of the FANGs and things like that. TQQQ, and then you have the Bitcoin Trust, right? So you could actually use this. I personally trade this on iBit, right? There's less fees involved with iBit. But if you guys believe in Bitcoin and you want to take advantage of it in your Roth, this is a signal that is for you, right? And it's pretty cool because I believe in Bitcoin, but I sold all my Bitcoin that's in my Roth. That's the only Bitcoin I hold in my Roth is the iBit. I sold it up there and I saved myself 18%, you know? And I just trade Bitcoin this way. I look at the signal. What is it doing? That's what I'm doing in my stock portfolio. Not many trades. You can see since 2024, 2 years now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 trades in 2 years. That's like a trade a month, right? It's not super high maintenance. It's very easy. Better be on it. Now let's look at Leo, and then we'll get to Geminis. Or actually, let's get to Geminis, and then we'll look at Leo. Here you can see Gemini Bitcoin currently in a pretty awesome long trade. Okay, so it caught the long trade pretty good at 88,000, currently holding that into profit. You can see Bitcoin did have a pretty nice expansion here. Actually made a new high today. You could see that right there. Let's see if it can hold this high or if it's going to fake us out and chop around again. But Gemini Bitcoin is currently in this trade. Cardano out of the market. You can see that since October, actually had some really nice short trades. It's up 33% since then because Cardano kind of got crushed, down 50%, as much as 50%. But yeah, and by the way, a lot of these strategies, the community told us that in the next 2 weeks, they're going to release V4, which we've been kind of hyping up for some time. But very soon we could see a big upgrade to our strategies, which hopefully make us more money and hopefully reduce the drawdowns that these strategies have experienced. Because, I mean, Cardano was one of the best performing strategies into 2025. And then you had Trump tweet a whole bunch of stuff and it went into its most amount of drawdown. But let's see. I mean, Cardano could have a lot of growth ahead of it. Ethereum. Now, this was the unfortunate turn of events. This strategy, which before never attacked super aggressively on the short side up until this year, you could see was attacking on the short side pretty well in 2022, right? Got chopped around on some short trades here, right? Where we had a really big structural breakdown in the market, but it got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 short trades wrong in a row, which caused it to have a pretty big amount of drawdown. You can see about 15%. It got into a pretty good trade on the short side, but then the market kind of turned around, so it wasn't able to recover a lot of the losses. Got chopped around on this price action here. Got chopped around even more on these short trades here as well. So currently Gemini ETH since 2025 is in its biggest drawdown that we've seen it yet. Okay, so not super awesome, but you know, usually we have periods of drawdown followed by some expansion. So hopefully we see that. Again, these strategies, if you pay attention to them, right? If you pay attention to them, spend most of their time in drawdown, right? They're not gratifying month to month. They're not here to constantly give us profit. What they're here to do is grow our net worth, hopefully as time goes on. And when we can catch ourselves in a bull market like we did like we did in 2021, right? That's where we see a lot of exponential growth on these algorithms as these assets have their new all-time highs, price discovery, all of that, right? If the market goes sideways like it did in this period, you can see the strategy also will go sideways in drawdown. Again, the majority of the time, the strategy is in drawdown. It's like the S&P 500. If you miss the 7 best trading days, you would massively underperform what those that have always been invested in have, right? You can see it was in a period of drawdown from March of 2024 all the way until May of 2025. That was over a year of drawdown for the Gemini ETH strategy, which was our best performing strategy up until the end of the year last year. Second best performing strategy now. But you can see like there's times where, yeah, it goes into a big period and it has a big chunk of drawdown. You can see that like its biggest drawdown was actually into February of last year. It was down 44.6%. It lost so many trades in a row. It got chopped around so much. You can see this period right here, right? This period right here. Long trades, chop, 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 chop. And then finally, it had my check, check, check. Is it back on? What's going on? We're good? Okay, I can see my good stuff here. Yeah. So let's see. 414, no sound. No sound. 413. So 2 minutes of no sound. what I was basically pointing out was just that it's interesting that the strategy itself since March of 2024 is up 17%. It's in drawdown, but it's up generally. In the same time period that Solana is actually sideways, right? Like Solana has been sideways for the last 2 years. And if you want to see something crazy, this is how crazy crypto is. I'm going to overlay this on Sol market cap. Look at this. This is the market cap of Solana, right? And let's just quickly look at the weekly time frame. I'm just going to point out something. Look at this. This is the market cap of Solana. Look at where the market cap was in November of 2021 and look at where the market cap is now, right? The market cap of Solana is where it was in November of 2021, but the price of Solana is 50% off, right? So this is part of the tokenomics and things that happen that we don't really see or pay attention to, but they do happen. So a lot more supply has been released since then. And yeah, it's quite interesting. So like the market cap of Solana is on one level potentially set to run because the market cap is near all-time highs. So let's see what happens. And if we get into our Leos, okay, we have Leo Bitcoin in a trade on Bitcoin doing pretty good so far. We have Leo ETH out of the market, been out of the market since December. And as you heard me allude, this is our best performing strategy of last year. And it's interesting because this is a little bit of a testament to sometimes the tortoise does win the race, right? Now, Gemini ETH finished the year green and strong, but because it takes more trades, ended up getting into more drawdown, right? Ended up getting into more drawdown, which these strategies are not profitable all the time. They're actually wrong more often than they're right. It's just that when they're wrong, their losses are smaller than their correct trades. So it just works out. But Leo ETH last year ended up returning about 48%. This is the strategy, right? And because it avoided all those short trades that Gemini ETH took and this chop, it ended up saving itself some capital, okay? Ended up saving itself some capital, which is really cool to see. Leo Sol, I mean, it's just like Gemini Sol, right? Like very similar. No trades since September 5th of 2025. Out of the market. Pretty cool. And then my favorite, or one of my favorites, Leo Bitcoin Bull Run. Still out of the market since 112,000. Okay. So avoided a lot of drawdown. Let's see what happens if well, I could see the deviation. So it's not going to enter any trades until Bitcoin is back above 100,000, right? That's at least the strategy here. And that completes it. We got Cardano too, but I don't know if a lot of us are trading Cardano on the long side, but it's doing okay and a lot of drawdown. I'm excited for when V4 comes out. I think Cardano as a tradable asset is going to be interesting. Just looking at market structure and potentially making higher highs and higher lows is potentially putting in a higher low, right? When we get that new strategy for V4, I can still see my sound, King Real. I don't know if it's just you. But yeah, I mean, this thing has a long way to go back to all-time highs. It'd be cool to trade that, you know? But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I have for our update. Good that my computer didn't crap out. Usually craps out when I've got so much stuff going on, but maybe it also enjoyed its break and is doing pretty good now. If you guys have questions, I'll take 5 minutes for questions. I know we covered a lot. It's been pretty good with information, I hope. Hope you guys weren't bored or no one's asleep. Thank you, Jamie, Gia, Billy. Feel good. Any questions, you guys can throw them in. We do have Inside the Vault coming up this week. We'll cover more of the yearly stuff there. Okay, I'll put some statistics up. And yeah, so we got some a nice week ahead of ourselves. I hope you guys have set your New Year's resolutions, the new you, whoever that might be. Live up to it. And let's hope that our portfolios are, nice and growing this year. Okay. We got the stock signals to take advantage of the stock market. We got the vaults and the crypto strategies to take advantage of crypto. So yeah, let's see. Gonna see how many people do we have live right now? 36. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Yeah, smash the like button. I host this on my YouTube channel as well. I haven't got a stock signal in months. Are they still working? Yeah, you make sure your notifications are on. We had a Tesla trade. Yeah, I would look into that, Crypto Gardener. We had a Tesla trade last week. Thank you. On fire, just like the energy of this year, hopefully. Fire horse, time to get on that horse and ride it into the sunset or Valhalla or the end of the rainbow where the big pot of gold is going to be. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed. I want to introduce you to my new best friends. I've got my plant here and I've got my plant over there. I got some plants over the week or over the holiday. And those are the Brazilian Lucky Woods. So hopefully they bring some more prosperity and clean air to this awesome office that I've got set up for myself. But with that, that's all I got. 422, no questions, it's good. You guys enjoy the rest of your days, weeks, and hopefully you have a good start of the Pat. Nice one, Billy. Yeah. Hopefully you guys have a good start of your year. Have a good attitude. Be positive and don't be mean to people. Yeah. We'll get to it. See you all whenever I see you next. Peace and blessings. Let's end this live.